Welcome back to First Look, the show where we give you a first look at something coming up in the board game industry.
Yeah, this one is Agemonia from Lotta Pellet. This is a 1 to 4 player cooperative fantasy adventure game. It's going to have a book that you're going to be going through all of these maps. There's a lot going on in this game for sure.
Yeah, and some of this content you may have seen. I know there's been some broadcasts of live plays. Yep. I've been on one of them. We're going to be sending out some content, but we wanted to do this video just to show you the things that we really like about this game, or that kind of jump out to us as being really cool, and some things that we haven't really seen in other games.
Yeah, this does have some unique features. Like Ryan said, we're certainly not going to go through an exhaustive play or even structural breakdown of the round. We do have a round 1. If it's not on the channel already, it will be very soon when you're watching this. You can watch that for all of those details, but we're going to highlight just a few things, starting with how this game is sort of built.
Yeah, the presentation, for one thing, is key.
Yeah.
Because this game has a very high tactile element. You've got really great components. You've got poker chips that make up your stamina. You've got these cool miniatures. And you've got this book and all of these colorful decks and pieces. And the fact that the game takes place on a storybook is really cool. I like that more games are going to this kind of storybook, so you're not setting up tiles every time you play. Yeah. It's a lot faster.
Yeah, the other thing too is the artwork in this storybook is really, really well done. Like, I'm not going to turn the pages because I don't want to disrupt what we have on the table here, but of the 3 scenarios we've played, the maps are very, very different. And the detail in these maps, this is a very micro sort of game. So the map is not a macro sort of regional thing. Like, this is the first scenario, the flooded inn. So we've got literally the flooded inn on this side and a stable on this side. Our miniatures are going to be making their way around here, distracted by all sorts of things, trying to get as many different things done as they possibly can before they get to the end of the scenario. These scenarios are going to play out a little bit differently from scenario to scenario. This one has kind of a bit of a timer, whereas the next one doesn't. And then the last one that we played kind of just ends when it ends. You never really know what's going to happen.
And when you're looking at this storybook, it might seem like a traditional narrative game, but there's something that this game does very differently. And that's by giving you all of these points of interest. These are not spaces necessarily that you have to move to and interact with. These literally are things that you can see from a range. So if you are within range, for example, of C, you'll actually look through the deck of cards. You'll find out what's happening at C. You'll have a whole set of text to read, and then you'll lay that card out in front of you. So you have all of these cards that will be spread out across the table that represent all of these different points of interest.
Yeah, and for me at least, that was a unique aspect. This may have been in another game, but like the example he just gave, you can see letter C from a couple spaces away. In other games, there might be things on the map and you'll go to that place, you'll uncover the story. In this one, you'll see it from a space or 2 away, and then you can see what it's all about. And the key element that brings to the game is that distraction of like, oh, well, I was headed over here, but now I've got to go check out what's going on behind the bar here because that might be something we need to get done.
And you get a little bit of an idea of what you want to do, or if something is maybe easy to ignore. Maybe you see something in the distance and say, let's come back to that. I don't want to really worry about that right now because, like David said, all of these scenarios have different objectives, and it's a cooperative game, of course, so you're really trying to focus on completing that main objective. I mean, you can try to do all this stuff, but you're not going to be able to do all this stuff. You have to pick and choose in this game, which is another aspect I really like because it leans into that cooperative element. You need everyone to kind of spread out, and everyone has to be doing things if you want to have a chance of completing the scenario.
Yeah, that cooperative element, like Ryan just said, moving your people and your different figures around the map, spreading out, is key. You kind of have to balance that with all the things that you're trying to get done. And each character or hero is going to have some strengths and weaknesses. So you might uncover something in the story and think, well, I'm probably not going to be good at that. If you uncover something that looks like it's going to be a feat of strength, you might want your strong character to do that. And that might play into whether you ignore it or not.
So when we're talking about the characters, you're going to have the ability to progress and change these characters over time. Each character board has slots where you can add in new actions, and you can actually change these actions out between missions. As you earn them, you'll end up with like a little stack of these mission tiles, and you can kind of decide before you go in what you want for that specific scenario.
Yeah, and there's a really cool aspect to the characters too and how they work. We're not going to go into the full turn structure, But you're going to have actions, like Ryan just said, that you can upgrade. Everyone's going to start with 2 printed on their player board. And then you've got maneuvers over on the other side. And the way the structure works is at the beginning of any round, all the players are going to choose with this little marker what action they want. And that's not only going to determine their action, which in some cases is kind of an ongoing effect, but it's also going to have some play into the initiative order. Yeah. And that's even going to be something that sort of evolves from scenario to scenario, because in this case, we have initiative printed on the map, but in later scenarios, there are initiative cards. But the interesting thing is you choose that action, which kind of serves as a strategy for the round, because that is, once it's done, that's your action. But the maneuver, you don't have to decide until you're taking your turn. So the way it plays out is when someone takes their maneuver and does their turn, things might change in the state of the game, where the maneuver you thought you were going to do, you might change it up now because some things have evolved on the map.
Yeah, and I think that's another thing that people would be interested in watching this. If you like the idea of changing narrative or branching narrative paths, this game has that in droves. In fact, some of the things that you do might actually literally change the map by adding new cards that cover spaces or new cards that sit off to the side, giving you access to new areas. So the map is constantly evolving. And you're going to get markers and you're going to get cards that are later referenced by the narrative. If you have X card, then you go down a different path. And that's something that, for me at least, is very important for my campaign games. I like to know that the decisions I'm making matter in later scenarios. And they seem to, at least for the 3 that we've had the chance to play.
And another cool thing about that is some of the things you might get might kind of give you some clue as to where that might be headed. Other things you might get, and they're a bit of a mystery.
Right.
You might find some things and you're like, I don't know what this is for, but it's probably going to be for something. So sometimes you're going to have to make some decisions. Do I hold on to that? You might need to get it back to a certain location in order to carry it on with you. Things like that are going to be at play all throughout this. So there's a lot of decision making going on. And again, this is just for the 3 scenarios we've played. Most of these boil down to trying to get as many of those things done as you can within the time frame, at least for this first scenario.
Yeah, you might get to scenario 3 and realize, oh, I wish we had done this thing in scenario 1. Didn't seem important at the time, but it comes back and you wish you had some certain items or some certain specific encounters. There's a lot that you can miss in this game, which I think lends to the replayability. If you played through these missions again, you might see things that you didn't see before or make decisions that you didn't make the first time, which is going to result in a different game experience.
Oh yeah, I would say most of these types of games don't have super high replayability, but I would say there are definitely things you're going to likely miss when you play through one of these scenarios. One other thing I wanted to mention, as you might have seen on the table here, are these dice. Now, games like this often boil down to what many might refer to as dice chucking. And you are going to be rolling dice for a number of different things. Skill checks, combat as well. These are all going to be things that sort of build throughout the scenarios in these first 3. One of the cool features here is this stack of poker chips. Because not only is this effectively your health in a way, but you're also going to be able to spend these off the top to mitigate the dice rolls. There's actually no failures.
No
really.
actual failures.
No actual failure. You're not ever going to roll a side that straight up won't give you anything. Sometimes there's successes, and other times you get this symbol that allows you to spend chips to turn this into 1 or 2 more successes. So you almost can do just about anything as long as you have some stamina left. And then, of course, one of your maneuvers for everyone is to recover some of that stamina as well.
Yeah, it's definitely resource management when it comes to those stamina chips. So you've got that resource management, you've got that cooperative play, you still have your dice chucking elements, you have your combat, your exploration, your narrative. I mean, this game does combine a lot of different things into one game. And if you're a fan of those things, I think that this game is probably going to be up your alley.
Yeah, I would say, to put sort of a blunt descriptor on it, if you like games like Gloomhaven, and I think maybe even with as much, if not more in some cases, narrative aspect than even Gloomhaven has, this is going to be your style of game for sure.
Yeah, for sure. So take a look at our channel. Well, like David said, we've got that round 1 coming. The game itself is coming to crowdfunding later this year. So be sure to take a look for that campaign when it comes out. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of stuff that is announced that we haven't even seen yet.
Yeah, we've only seen the 3 scenarios. We have a small little box and a big box that had some miniatures in it. there's going to be a lot more to this game than we've
I'm
shown
sure,
here.
I guarantee it.
And like we said, there's some stuff in here that didn't even apply to the scenario we played this first one anyway.
Right.
So definitely take a look for all of that. Until then, make sure everyone has fun at the table, and we'll see you next time. Congratulations, you got to the end of one of our videos. Now, if you want more practice, just click on the video over here. It's another video. You might not have seen it yet, so click on it. If you don't want to do that, at least click on the subscription button below. That always helps us. And if you want notifications, please ring that bell.